In the tapestry of life, where every thread holds a story, America in Black and White emerges as a haven for the voices echoing through the heart of our communities. In this podcast, we wade through the rivers of our collective experiences, celebrating the vibrant hues of change brought forth by the whispers of hope and the roars of action. It's more than just a conversation. It's a journey into the heart of our society, illuminated by the light of those daring to dream and do. Join us, and let your voice be the melody that guides us toward a dawn where every color finds its place in the masterpiece of our shared destiny. Together, let's paint a future brimming with the positives that dwell in our minds and the actions that shape our world.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of America in Black and White. I'm your host, Charles King. Hey, before we get the show started, I'd like to say Happy Black History Month to everyone. And we're going to kick the show off with a reflection of James Baldwin, who is a truth teller of a nation for Black history. James Baldwin remains one of the most essential voices in Black history because he dared to articulate the emotional, psychological, and political realities of being Black in America with unmatched clarity. Baldwin understood that history is not simply a record of events, it is a mirror, and he forced America to look into that mirror without flinching. His reflections on identity, belonging, and moral responsibility of a nation come to shape how we understand race, justice, and liberation today. Baldwin's insistence that nothing can be changed until it is faced is a guiding principle for educators, leaders, and community builders like Dr. Gardner, who work daily to transform systems from the inside out. Baldwin's legacy is not just literary, it is instructional. He teaches us that truth is a tool, courage, and is a requirement, and education is a pathway to collective freedom. So, just so we now it's time for us to get into the show, and I'd like for you guys to know that again, good evening and welcome to another powerful episode of America in Black and White, where we confront the issues shaping our communities, celebrate the leaders moving us forward, and honor the legacy of those who paved the way. Tonight, we're shining a light on a leader whose work embodies purpose, resilience, and transformation. In a time when public education is under pressure, when equity is still a battle, and when our children need champions more than ever, there are individuals who rise to that moment. And Dr. Nicolas Gardner is one of them. From Topeka roots to district leadership, from physical education teacher to principal of a pre-K-8 signature music campus, from scholar to mentor to community advocate, Dr. Gardner represents what it means to lead with heart, vision, and accountability. And as we honor Black History Month, we also honor the lineage that shapes leaders like him, the thinkers like James Baldwin, the movements that birth our progress, and the personal influences like his father, who instilled the values that guide his life's work. Tonight, we're not just having a conversation, we're documenting a legacy. Let's get into it and let's welcome Dr. Nicolas Gardner to the show. Hello, sir.
Thank you, Charles, for having me on your podcast today. And happy Black History Month. It's an honor to be on, but especially during this month of February.
Well, I thank you so very kindly. And is there anything you'd like to say to the audience before we get into the show?
Yeah, I would just like to welcome everyone to the show. I hope you are looking forward to a conversation. We're going to talk about schools, community, mentoring, really all the things that got me where I am in this position today.
All righty. So let's start out first with I'd like for people to get to know a little bit about the guests and they get the opportunity to learn how your situation started from where you grew up to where you are now. What's it like growing up in Topeka And how did your upbringing shape your worldview?
Yeah, so I'm born and raised in Topeka, Kansas. My father, which I know we'll talk more about later in the show, was actually a principal. So every day before, when I was getting up, going to school, obviously my dad put on the suit and tie every single day. And I think some of that's kind of really what's instilled where how I got to where I'm at today. Grew up in Topeka, went to a school called Shawnee Heights. From there, I went to Emporia State. And when I was in high school, I loved sports. I love basketball. I love football. So my goal was to be a physical education teacher and a coach. That was where my passion was at. That's where I wanted to be. But one thing that I've taken just a love is a love of learning. So my background consists of, while I was at Emporia, I got an undergraduate in physical education. I then got my master's in special education because at the time it was difficult to get a physical education job. So I had to make sure I at least have a job. If not, it'd be special ed. Ended up getting a job in Topeka Public Schools in Topeka, Kansas as a PE teacher. While I was a PE teacher, I continue to go back to school, and that's what I instill a lot of our students on is, learning something they can't take away from you. So I went and got my administration degree, and then from there I was able to become an assistant principal after I taught PE 10 years, and then from there I started my principalship at Ross, and then during my first year at Ross, that's when I was working on my doctorate, and I finished that. And then now I'm at year 4 of Ross, and then I'm at my first year being a pre-K through 8 campus principal, which really encompasses 2 schools where I receive both of those schools.
When did you first realize that education would become your life's calling?
No, that's a great question. It really started the first day when I walked into being a physical education teacher. I just saw when the students saw me in the classroom, I saw like really a look in their eyes and somebody they could really look up to and really gravitate towards. And then that's when I realized, this is beyond, the education. This is helping kids see themselves. And so from there, I just set out to myself to really be the best I can in whatever position I'm at, and then instill that education belief in the students that we serve. So I would say it's probably the first day I walked in as a physical education teacher.
What is it like being surrounded by all of those young, brilliant minds that have to be molded to be the great people that they are today?
I mean, that's why I'm in education, and that's the best part of my day. And I would tell you that when you're a teacher and you become a principal, it's very similar. It's just a much bigger impact and landscape you can have. But the love of kids, I think, is what drives everyone in education and is willing to do this hard work. And it is hard work, but it's work that's really for your heart. I often heard this thing like it's called heart work, and that's what I think. Especially where I'm at, that's what we're doing every day.
So, who are the mentors or teachers who made the biggest impact on you as a young man?
I have a few, and it's really comes when you think about your mentors. They come at different times of your life, and when you need them, and when you look back, you can see really the impact they had. It goes to my kindergarten teacher, Ms. Roby, who I loved going to school every day. To my math teacher, I really struggled in math. My 7th grade math teacher, Ms. Bell, and then the most recently, I would say the person who's made quite a big impact on my life was my advisor for my dissertation. Those that wrote the dissertation know your academic advisor, the person you work with closely, really is the person that can really help push you over to get to the finish line. And that person was Dr. Mann for me, and he taught me just the love of research and how you can really apply it to everyday life. But also, he pushed me. He gave me feedback, and I think that's one thing I've been receptive to. He gave me feedback to help me improve my practice, and I took that feedback and ultimately got where I needed to be. So I would say those 3 were probably the biggest in my life to this point.
So, when it comes to your students, what is the dialogue between you all when you're actually trying to give them some feedback or they're giving you feedback? How does that work?
Oh, anyone that's worked with middle school kids, they're real quick to give you feedback on things. They're not too shy to share their opinions. But what I try to tell them is I always listen. I think that's one of the probably the qualities that I've taken in this leadership is I always listen. And so I make sure when students are talking to me or sharing the story, I'm always listening and then asking them questions. And at the elementary level, it's kind of a little bit more of that listening role because they'll tell you all kind of different things that have happened. And then the key is remembering what that student told you like the next time you run into them. So that's kind of probably the biggest thing that I've taken is I listen, but I also show them how feedback can help you. And sometimes when you hear something, because I tell our teachers a lot in middle school, they may not hear you right now, but 4 years from now, 5 years from now, they are going to hear that message. And it's up to us to keep instilling that belief in them.
Your early experiences in Topeka School influence your leadership philosophy today?
Um, it's shaped everything. Topeka Public Schools is where I have been my whole career. And it's really because I've met a lot of good people in this district who I would say believed in me at times before I believed in myself. Our current superintendent is Dr. Tiffany Anderson, and she's the first African American superintendent in our district. And being around different leaders such as herself and such as Mr. Robbins, those minority people in those positions have really believed in me and given me my belief to allow me to have these different positions and grow in those aspects. So I would say Topeka has taught me a lot. I've learned they've given me grace along the way because you're going to make mistakes, but the key is what do you do, what do you learn from them, and then where do you go next? So Topeka is what I call my home. My family's here, and this is where I can see myself for the conservative future.
So, what values did your family instill in you that still guide your work?
Uh, the biggest value that my father was a principal, as I said, he's in education. My sister's in education, and then my mom, I guess you say, is the outlier. She was kind of in the business sector. So sometimes when we're having conversations, she doesn't quite understand education because it's a lot different. But she was in a position where my dad, and my mother were the first in their families to go to college. So they have started this trajectory, and all they wanted me to do was just do a little bit better than them. And I think that's probably something that I take to heart. And I'm sorry, I didn't catch the first part of your question.
What values did your family instill in you that still guide your work?
Yeah, the first one is education. They taught me when I only think I think they knew they were doing this. So when I was growing up, my parents would always take me to Emporia State. So Emporia State's a Division II college here in Kansas, and that's where my parents went to school. So as a young boy, I was often go up there once a year. My dad would walk me around the campus. I didn't really know why at the time, but guess where I ended up going to school? Emporia State. And I was already familiar with the campus and how to walk around. I knew the dorms. I can tell you everywhere on that campus. So I think they instilled this belief that sometimes I think some of our students don't think about college. And so that's one thing that I'm real big on is education. And then just the value of being the best you can be where you're at. So one of the lessons they taught me is whatever you do, Nick, that's what they call me, you be the best you can. So when I started a job, I worked at Dillon's, my first job in college, I had to move the items close on the shelf. I was a stalker, moved the items. They said, you make sure they're straight and they're perfect. And I've really carried those principles to anything I do is just be the best you can be. And then different opportunities will come and your way. So I would say those are probably the two biggest things my parents have both taught me.
Tell us what is your motivation?
My motivation is every day I walk in these halls and see so much potential, so many brilliant students who just really need someone to believe in them and not give up on them. So I'm lucky that I get to work with, I see preschoolers in a day, so I can go from a 4-year-old to an eighth grader. And just an example, today our eighth graders were enrolling in high school. So we're having conversations about high school credit and how it's important that you start on a good setting. And so I think that's probably the motivating factor for me is our students first. And then the second part is seeing the wonderful educators. I know education now can be always not looked at in the most positive outlook, but every day I see teachers and staff giving everything they have to our students. And so that just motivates me even more to give everything I have and to be able to provide the support for our teachers and our staff.
Mm. So let's transition over to your educational journey. What drew you to physical education as your entry point into teaching?
So I wanted to pick something that I loved, and I wanted that was one thing. My father, you have to find something you're passionate about, and I love sports and I love being active, and so I thought the best route for me would be to become a physical education teacher. So I was an elementary PE teacher, and that's really where my heart was at. And then that allowed me to honestly start getting a little bit of coaching. And a lot of coaching principles are honestly the same kind of principles you take into a principalship. So I was able to start a coaching program at our elementary school. So we don't have a program for students to be involved in sports. So one thing I started at Quincy was an intramural program where we were able to have students participate in the sports in our Parks and Rec League. And that was really impactful because that was a lot of the times their students' first time actually playing any type of sport. So I would say my love for sports kind of grew and helped me find the love of how you get your community involved in the school, and then how you can really help your whole school transform with those aspects.
So is it that, so are you saying that it was like, it was sports that, in the process of you getting into being a physical education teacher, but that is also what you use to connect with the community?
Yeah, that's really where I started this. Because when you get into apprenticeship, you really realize, schools can't do it by themselves. And often the schools are the heart of the community. And when I started teaching physical education, I got into coaching. None of the kids had shoes. They didn't have any nice shoes. They didn't have the money to be able to pay for to get into the league. And so I really had to start. That's where I started getting this approach of community and really asking the community how they can support our schools. And that's one thing we partnered with the local firefighter union, and they provided all of our students a brand new pair of shoes and socks. And that's kind of where it started from there. And then in that program, the best thing I think as a leader or any position you get in is when you leave, if the systems still remain, and that program still continues to this day by that support of the local firefighter union. So that's something I'm really proud of, and proud of the people who have come after me that have continued that partnership and avenue for our students.
So, did your time as a PE teacher prepare you for school leadership?
I think the first thing it taught me is I was able to work with a wide range of students. So as a physical education teacher, you see all the way, I saw K through 5. So I think that helped me because there's a difference between kindergarten and fifth grade. So I was able to uh, really provide, that helped me as I became a principal. The second thing I think that being a physical education teacher helped me is it's really the same things that brought you into being a principal, being a PE teacher, whatever you're doing, are the same principles that you can apply to a principalship. So working with the students, working with the community, you can't forget those things because that's how you got ultimately the position you are. And then obviously in a new role, there's things that you don't know, and sometimes experience is the best teacher. And so I think that's something that you just learn through as you go through your principalship.
So, do you think with the way education is under attack right now, and how there basically public school is being destroyed? So, do you take, or do you think in terms of taking your sense of community and education because of the love that you have for it? How do you actually make it work where you forge the two together and you're trying to hold on and you're holding on as best as you possibly can at this point? What are some of the things that you're doing that's making that connection?
I think the first thing all educators can do is I think we have to share our own story. I think a lot of times if you don't share your story, a narrative will be written about either your school or your community. You can walk in any school, I think you can walk in any school in America and you're going to see something great that day. And so I think it's up to us as building principals or administrators to highlight those and highlight those teachers and those students who are performing very well. Example, this weekend we had a student go to the Shawnee County Spelling Bee. A fourth grade student made it to the third round. And that's something we're very proud of. She was competing against eighth graders. And so I think that's the part as educators we can do is to make sure we share our own story. And I often challenge our community to, if you have a critique or if you have something we can do better, come spend time in our schools. And that's kind of where we started this initiative of Be Present Mentors. And when I say be present, it just means being where our kids are at. And so we have different tiers for mentorship, which I can talk about later. But I think that's another aspect is you invite the community into your school, because I think a lot of times they want to help, they just don't know necessarily what you need help with. So it's up to us principals and school administrators and district leaders to really help our community be able to help us. And then in turn, we help them be successful as well. Because if our schools do well, everybody does well. And so I think everyone have an understanding that we're all on the same team and then working through that together.
Wow. So I'm not sure about how the actual Kansas system run because when I hear people in different cities and states and school systems, like I'll just use the one here. I'm in Georgia. And here in Georgia, it's kind of like um it's a little bit different to where, it's like how they classify the schools and like how the schools primarily it's like they're fending for for resources, or for funding, where all the funding is being diverted to one particular part of this area. Are you guys facing anything like that in Topeka?
So Topeka is a little unique. So the city of Topeka itself has one district, so that's Topeka Public Schools, and it's considered an urban school district. And then surrounding Topeka, we have some suburban, smaller districts for outside of Topeka. And so with our funding is always, I think, a topic for education. But I think when you look at funding, you really gotta what I do is I look at how we're using the resources that we currently have to the best of their ability, whether it's staff, whether it's funds we're getting for students, and then what can we use that to get the biggest return on investment. And I think we have some community partners in the Topeka Public Schools we're fortunate to have. So we have a company here called Advisors Excel, and they strategically have put a lot of dollars into what are the East Topeka schools, which in Topeka, those are the schools who are Title One, have some more challenges. So I think they're strategic in those aspects. And it's up to us as building principals to be able to explain, you've given us these dollars, but what's the return on your investment? And to me, the return on your investment, our overall arching theme is student achievement. We want our students to be performing at state grade level or above. And so that's our goal. But there's many different ways that we have to get there, because our schools just sometimes just have different challenges where we might need to have a food bank in our school, a clothing bank in our school to provide those resources not only to our students but our families as well.
What motivated you to pursue dual master degrees?
That's a great question. No one's ever asked me that question. So it really, I love to learn, and I think what I was told as I was going through the process is, your degrees are something nobody can ever take away from you, and I really, really took that to heart. Is that it is something I'm proud of, because I went to school straight through, and so I think that also helped. Is I started in college, and I was done 10 years later. So I did both my master's and my doctorate all back to back, and I really the the best part of having a doctor degree now is when you hear, our young our young black boys, say Dr. Gardner, just that feeling of proud. And sometimes somebody will call me Mr. Gardner, and they'll quick to correct and say, no, that's Dr. Gardner. And so that's probably the best part of this degree, is just seeing how the students look at you and they say, are you a real doctor? And just being able to have that conversation with them and say, yes, I went to school. This is what you have to do. And then you can do it too. And so I think that's the best part. But no, I got the degrees just as something that nobody can take away from me, and to really show our students that anything is possible.
The one thing that I got to say that, especially being the host of this show, that makes me more proud than anything is to see all of the black professional men that are in this education realm, that are all of you guys are making such an impact. And it's a shame that a lot of people don't get the opportunity, to see, people such as yourself, especially as a principal of two schools. But how does that work? Now, my thing is that I know, from one of the guests that was on here was just saying that, the number is so small when it comes to black male educators. What can we do, from your perspective, to start pulling in more of those qualified black men to get into the classroom and to make the same impact that most of you guys are making?
I think one, you're doing it, Charles, highlighting. And so thank you again, highlighting those people who are in the field that are doing the work. So I think that's step one. And then step two, I think, is community. I think as Black leaders, sometimes you can feel on the island, you can feel alone in this work. And I've been fortunate that I have great mentors who are minorities that I can talk to, have conversations with, because they understand some things just not everybody else is going to understand. So I think making sure that you have a community and then also celebrating each other. I'm real quick to see when I see something great from, another Black educator, I'm real quick to highlight that, say congratulations, because those little things really go a long way. Even if you don't know the person, but just congratulating them, that just means a lot. And so I think those are some things that I'm currently doing. And I think if we all work together to do that, we'll see, more people in our field.
Dissertation topic on the schools within school model.
So the school to the school model is actually a dissertation topic study over the current elementary school I work at, Ross Elementary. So prior to me coming to Ross, it was a school that had high turnover with staff, low culture, discipline, and principals. I believe they had 6 or 7 principals, like in a 13-year span. So a lot of turnover. And this was spearheaded by our superintendent, Dr. Anderson, who really challenged me, and we worked together to come up with how can we make Ross successful. And so we initially set out to have a schools in a school model. So at Ross, we have a very large school physically and over like about 600 students, which is pretty large for our district. So we divided the school in half. So we have a pre-K through second assistant principal, a 3 through 5 assistant principal. And then we took the equity mindset and said, what do our schools really need? And so we added 2 counselors, 2 social workers, 2 mental health mentors. And I think providing that equity lens, because not all schools need the same thing. And so that's really what my dissertation really looked at. And then, myself as the principal over the whole Ross itself. And so that was the premise of my dissertation. And then the research looked at 11 different factors like culture, community, uh, um, arrival dismissal, PLC process, student achievement, and every factor improved within the 100 days. And so that really shows you that when you really specifically target schools who are often hard to staff, it can really have a great impact. And then what wasn't in my dissertation was the retention factor. We were sitting there around like 90% every year since then at Ross with our retention of our staff, which is in our area, that's critical. So I think approaching the schools with equity lens and really asking, what does your school need? Is that more mental health? Is that more resources? Is it more administrators? And so that's the premise of my dissertation. And so that's what made it very special to me. It was actually real-time research in a real school with real students in practice.
I want to ask you something because you said something that caught my ear. Tell me, like, how did you guys decide, in the process of doing your dissertation, how did you come to the conclusion as to what were the needs and what weren't the needs? How did you come up with that?
So when I originally started my dissertation, and this is where it's good to have good advisors. I really want to do something on zip codes and looking at different schools. In my dissertation, Cherry, this is probably the best advice he said. That's going to take you a really long time. And he's like, I know you're trying to save the whole world, but get your doctorate, then save the world. And so I really took that to heart, and I did it over controlled something that I could have an impact on. And I didn't know if it was going to be a positive or a negative when we really looked at the impact of the schools in the school model. And that's what's also kind of sparked, which I know we might get into in a little bit, is how we came up with this pre-K through 8 campus model. Because it's really been modeled after our schools in the school at Ross, and now we're trying to carry that over to the middle school for 6th, 7th, and 8th. It's really just being strategic and making sure that you have the adequate resources and the different staff for those challenging schools and areas in your school you need the support.
Well, I can tell you this. I know Thurgood Marshall is very proud of you. I know he's very proud of you. So, like, with that, for what you've done, as far as this part of education and what you're working on and trying to stabilize this, are you taking this out into like different organizations or foundations or whatever have you, and presenting and giving some ideas as some things in what you'd like to see as in the change of education?
Yeah, well, we've really, I've really only taken out to our different community partners, and I've also shared this data with our staff as well. And then going into this year, when we looked at the middle school, so our schools are actually connected. So they're connected by a bridge. So it has sixth, seventh, eighth grade on one side, and then we have our pre-K through fifth grade on the other side. So we're talking around 1,000 kids across both campuses, 180 staff. So it's a very large responsibility. But the great thing is we have really good people doing the work. And so we were able to have some additional positions at the Eisenhower Middle School, and we're really trying to replicate what we started at Ross over to Eisenhower. And the neat thing is we have pretty much every fifth grader, 95% of our fifth graders will go to Eisenhower. So there's some students who I've had since they were in third grade. And that part of stability for our community, I think, is the key, and that's critical. And I think that's probably the thing the dissertation maybe didn't discover, but that I'm seeing the results paying off now, is how stability and consistency in the community really ultimately pay off in the long run.
There's a comment. There's a couple of comments here from Dr. Dennis Whitfield, that's alluding to what you were saying with the what your mentor told you about saving the world. He says that's what they told him too.
No, that was real good advice. I was going down. I was a lot of research, and he's like, "You get your doctorate, then you save the world." So yeah, no, I completely agree with that.
And his second comment is, this is graduate first, then save the world. So I'm assuming that, when you're really altruistic, they just want to make sure that you focus on that education first before you get out there and you do everything else.
And the same aspects I've applied to the principalship. So when you often enter schools, there's so many things that need to be addressed. But I think being intentional and focused and making sure you do the little things well are going to pay off in the end. Because you can't come into school and change everything your first year. You got to be intentional. You got to listen. So I kind of taken that into my principalship, same approach for my dissertation.
So, what did your research reveal about discipline, communication, and culture in schools?
I don't have the exact number. So what we did is we surveyed the staff. So prior to me becoming the principal, the staff took a survey and they rated everything on a 1 through 5 scale. So 1 being not good, 5 being the best. The part of the dissertation I think that speaks to it, all 11 indicators improved within 100 days. So often when you think of change and reform, you think of it's like going to be a 3 or 4 year process, but it shows if you're specifically and you target and you really take the equity mindset, you can really make change for all. And so when I hear the word equity, I think what's best for all students, because we have some gifted students here that equity for them is we need to continue to push them in classes. We need to get them in gifted. Because when I started at Ross, we didn't have any gifted students. Now we're up to 5. And so I think those little increments along the way. But ultimately, I think what it showed is the importance of how communication, discipline, and culture can affect the school. And communication from the aspect of communication with our staff, communication with our families, communication with our students. So I think it's kind of confounded with that. And then with student discipline and support, it's just making sure you have the proper supports in place. Not necessarily students are getting suspended, things like that. Making sure you have the correct mental health resources in your schools to be able to provide all those wraparound service for our students. And then those are the things I think that I kind of we know, but we don't realize the impact they have on the overall school environment.
Let's transition over to your leadership at Ross and Eisenhower. So, what makes the Ross and Eisenhower pre-K signature music campus unique?
Well, what's unique is there are other campuses in our district. So there's 2 other schools that are considered campuses that are connected. We are the only school, however, that it has a campus principal, and that is myself. And then it's kind of like a really large high school when you think about it. And so that each school then has a lead assistant principal, which kind of serves that runs the day to day, and then other assistant principals, deans, counselors, and those aspects. So I think that's one thing that makes it unique. This is the first year the district has tried this model. And it really goes back to the stability and consistency in the community. And I think that's the biggest thing this model has shown. I would say the second part is we are a signature music school. So what that entails is we receive just additional funds for providing music in our schools, providing field trips. I think that's the biggest aspect. And then our fourth and fifth grade just get more experiences with trying different instruments. So really trying to take the whole approach of providing our students with some, maybe some things they would not receive at a different school if they did not attend our campus.
Now, let me go back because I just thought of something as you were mentioning this, and you just connected Ross and Eisenhower the way you did. When you think about the student ratio to your instructors or your teachers, and you mentioned also that you had some gifted kids as well at your school. For the staff that you have and the way the schools are connected and situated, does that allow you the opportunity to help your kids further advance than most schools? Because it sounds like you guys have got a foundation that's more than just teaching your kids, what it is from an educational perspective, but you guys are doing life learning.
Yeah, and I'll go back to the gifted students because I think this is an important thing to mention is these students didn't just appear when, I became principal. These students were in our schools before that. They just didn't have the advocacy of teachers and staff saying, I think this student's gifted and should be tested. Because a lot of times it takes a family member or a parent that says to get that gifted process started. And so I think we all at our schools have gifted students who sometimes are just maybe not having the ability to be tested for gifted. And then when you look at the academic achievement, Charles, that's probably one of the most exciting things about this is that the possibilities are endless. So this is just year one. But when you think about the fifth, so our fifth graders, that's the last year of elementary, and then sixth grade is the first year of middle school. So we think about that fifth to sixth transition, that can be very challenging for some students. But how often can you have sixth grade teachers talk to fifth grade teachers? And so I think those kind of conversations. And then another conversation I had was with during PLC in our ELA department. They've had some students that said they've never read a novel in their whole life. And I'm like, well, we can definitely fix that. So I went to our third grade team and said, can we start reading novels and books? And so those kind of conversations, I think, along the way can get lost when you go to a whole new school, new principal, new administration, that when it is consistent and we stabilize it, the growth of our students, I think, is going to be the outcome that we're going to see in the long run.
You approach leading, how did you approach leading two schools through integration?
Can you repeat that question, Charles?
How did you approach leading two schools through integration?
So I started at Ross, and then this is my first year doing both schools on this campus model. And what do you mean by integration of two schools, Charles?
I mean, like through integration, I'm gonna say as in, bringing the kids that are in the 1 through 5 with the kids that are in 6 through 8, that integration.
So our schools right now, they operate, so it's two separate schools. So we have our elementary side and our middle school side. They do not interact with each other because they're two separate schools, but we do have different opportunities for, I would say the biggest thing we do is mentoring. So we do have 2 periods a day where our middle school kids actually will come over and mentor, run small groups with some of our elementary students. And the impact that has is one, those students are also receiving a grade for that class, peer mentoring. And they're also really the younger students look up to them. So when I think of integration, those are some of the things that you can do when you are a campus. We also have our fifth graders come over and have lunch there to get that early exposure every day to our middle school. And then today we actually had a performance at Eisenhower where we brought our whole fourth grade to be able to see a quartet, like an orchestra performance. So when you think of integration, I'm thinking of different things like that. And the possibilities, we still haven't touched on all of them because there's so much we can do. But right now we're just laying the foundation for that this year.
So what and just in the you don't not like what you're actually doing, but can you give us like a visual as to what it's actually going to look like once you fully integrate the whole system that you're talking about?
I think you're going to see one, increased student achievement, and two, I think you're going to see a real sense of belonging and community across both schools. And you're going to see some just common ways of how you operate in a school, common expectations, common ways that we can be successful. And so I think that's the exciting part is we're just not quite there yet because we're in the first year. But I also think you're going to see a lot more connection between the mentoring of both schools and then really how to provide. When you bring two schools together, that also increases your resources and your community partners. And that's also something I'm excited about. And I think you're going to see also an increase in really everything from, academics to our athletics, and then ultimately our staff just feeling just a large sense of community and just different people they can rely on, different people they can talk to. Because with over 180 people, I often tell our staff this, all the answers we need are in this between both schools. We have some veteran teachers who are experts. We have some first year teachers who are doing great. We have instructional coaches. We have assistant principals. And so it's just being able to tap into all of their expertise and how to leverage that for our campus. So I think that's the future. And that's what's exciting. That's what motivates me. That's what keeps me excited about wanting to keep doing this in the future.
What are the biggest challenges facing pre-K campuses today?
Is it just preschool or pre-K through 8?
Well, the pre-K 8.
Okay. Well, preschool definitely is one that is getting students in preschool. So that's the first one. We see a big advantage to students who have the ability to attend preschool. So we're very fortunate to have that. And some of the challenges that I think a pre-K through 8 campus face are it's unique. There's not a lot of models that you can look at because often in schools you can kind of take a little bit of pieces and then just operate in a school that has over 1,000 students, 180 staff. It's just critical to think about being intentional and how we can best use our resources and all the logistical items and things of those avenues. But I would say the positives far outweigh some of the challenges that we're going through because the challenges often we can face them together and work through it. And then a challenge for myself as being the principal as a pre-K through 8 is just the magnitude and the large scope of the school. But it also highlights the need of anything great. Charles is done with a great team, and you can't do this work alone. And this has really um, caused me to really think about that and really how do we utilize our staff in the best way and know that we're all in it together.
You build a culture where both students and staff feel seen and valued.
So culture. So if I think of culture, because culture was one of the first things um, we addressed when we came to Ross was the first thing was culture. And culture to me, I view culture is how your school operates on its worst day. It's often easy to be a principal, on the good days when everything's going well, but when things hit the fan or when you have a tough moment and a tough, uh, challenging thing that happens at your school, that's when really your culture sets in. And culture, I think, it starts from the teachers. It starts with the principal, but as the principal, I think you hold the culture in something that you have to consider every single day. And I think you model the culture by how you what you do each day in the building, from talking to staff, from listening to staff. I think highlighting staff is one thing that I'm really big on is highlighting when you see a staff member doing something well. And then ultimately, when you highlight our staff and you have a good culture, it trickles down into our students. And one thing with our students that we really focuses on is we want to catch them doing the right thing. And so we highlight our students weekly. We have student month assemblies. And then one thing we also started was recognizing growth. So our students in Kansas take a MAP test, which is 3 times a year. And one thing we want to do is we want to make sure we highlight the students who have shown growth. The goal is achievement. The goals keep moving towards proficient, but we also have to recognize the growth of our students. So just finding ways to recognize your students in many different ways as possible, from attendance to growth to behavior, and then with the staff really looking at the same way. But it comes down to how you model that as a building principal and your administration team every single day.
So, what does equity look like in your building on a daily basis?
I'm glad you asked that. And equity to me is providing the students, it's really meeting the students where they're at. And so equity can look different day to day. I think equity is important for everybody. Like I mentioned earlier, it's important for the students who are already on grade level. How do we continue to push them? How do we work with the students who are behind? So that's kind of how I view the word equity, and just always being mindful of that when you approach a conversation, when you're talking to a student, is really meeting people where they're at and how can we get you to where the ultimate goal for that individual, whether it's a staff member or a student.
Hmm. So, like, what advice would you have for some of our teachers that are out here, especially those that may be watching, that may have some struggles, may not have a good team. Things are like looking really dull, and they're looking like it's like nothing's gonna happen. What is some advice that you can give them to help them to at least come up and push up and feel a whole lot better about their situation?
I would say continue to be the light. Often in a dark room, we need those who can carry the light and carry the weight of the team, but also just being great where you're at and control what you can control. In education, there's so many things that could happen in the day that you have no control over. But what you can control is your attitude and how you approach your students in your classroom. And if you model that, I think that'll help your other team members if you're having a difficult time, but ultimately it will help yourself and your students in your class. So I would say control what you control and then model what you expect from your students.
Transition over to your work and your mentorship and community impact. What inspired your involvement with the Minority Leadership Academy?
Oh, that's a great question. So in Topeka Public Schools, we have Minority Leadership Academy. This actually started back in 2010, and it's a group of minority educators in Topeka Public Schools. And currently, it's open to administration, teachers, classified. So there really is no specificity. The great thing is it's for people who want to be a leader. So we do have some people in Minority Leadership Academy who are our teachers and just want to be a leader in that aspect. We have others aspiring to be principals. We have others aspiring to be assistant principals. So we just have a vast array of people. And what's great about MLA is the acronym Minority Leadership Academy is it's a group where we can really come together and have sometimes tough conversations, but just really authentic conversations. And what's neat how this has transpired is we've been given some just opportunities that would not have come my way personally if it wasn't for MLA. We partnered with a company called Evergy. So Evergy is a big electrical company here in Kansas, and they've actually provided training to us for free. So there's twice a year we'd go to a training in a business where one of the trainings was the Clifton Strengths Finder. I know that's pretty common, crucial conversations. So we've been able to take on just some of those trainings that you necessarily want to get in the school. And then the biggest thing we do as an MLA group is we want to give back. So each year we give a $500 scholarship to a student in Topeka Public Schools who's going into education. And so when you think about, minority leadership, you think about our own growth, but also how we're giving back to those students who want to pursue education. So it kind of goes back to your original question is how do you get those students in the door, talking to them, get them an education, and then providing them a scholarship and resources to help sustain that throughout their time in college.
Well, another comment here in the chat here. That's why I put my glasses on so I can make sure I can read this. This is from James Abdullah. He says teachers in the U.S. are chronically undervalued, and it shows. We ask them to shape minds, manage trauma, adapt to constant policy shifts, and rise to the next generation. Then pay them like it's a hobby. If we truly believe education is the foundation, of society, compensation, respect, and support should reflect that. You can't build a strong future while treating your builders as expendable. Oh wow. So I think that that's actually saying a lot. That's basically talking about how teachers are being paid.
And I think he hit on a lot of key factors of things as building principals and administrators and those who support education is to really put a value in our educators. Because without educators, I mean, we wouldn't be here where I'm at today. And I think sometimes sharing those stories and having a recognition that everyone is where they're at because of an educator. I think we all have an educator or a teacher who has made a positive impact in our life. And that's something that I think we continue to advocate for our teachers, because they don't get in this work um, for money. But I think that's something that moving forward, that I know our district is always working to make sure we're one of the top paying districts in the state of Kansas. But also adding just some different things to really support teachers along the way. One thing we added this year, they call them personal development days or mental health days. So we have around 4 to 6 of those built in our calendar. And then really, how do you highlight those teachers and really continue to support them through this challenging work? Because we need teachers, we need the great people in the trenches, because they're the ones doing the work. And then I'm the lucky one that gets to sit and watch the great things happen. But it's my job to make sure I'm supporting and providing them with the resources they need to be successful. So great comment.
Um, how does mentorship strengthen the pipeline for future Black educators?
Mentorship to me is one of the biggest, it's probably my, if not the biggest passion I have in education, because I've seen it play out. One thing that I'm learning about mentorship is I'm learning there's different mentorships. So one group we just started working with last year was it's kind of non-traditional, is the East Topeka seniors. So we have a senior citizenship place, senior place where they live, probably like 5 minutes from our school. And they connected with me and said, "Hey, can we partner and have lunch buddies with a class?" And I thought, that's a great idea. So once a month, they come over and they have lunch with our third grade students. And just some of the conversations they have with our students, especially when it comes to Black history, because a lot of them, they were alive during some of the things they're learning about in class. So I saw a whole different approach to mentorship through that lens. But then also your traditional mentors where they come in and they work with a group of students. So we just have a lot of different aspects. And one thing I'm big on is just making sure it's consistent, because being a mentor, it is a lot of time. But the impact you can have if you build it over time is truly impactful. So we do have some that come work with students. So those are our Be Present mentors, and they'll come spend about every couple of weeks, sometimes in class, sometimes they'll pull them out of class. And the best part to being a campus is some of those fifth grade mentors I've been able to pair up again at Eisenhower. And then at Eisenhower, we started a group called Achievement Inspired Minds, which is a group for our eighth grade young men. And so mentoring to me is you can start it wherever you're at, with just a group, with one person. But ultimately, that's going to make an impact. And that's what's really going to help our students be successful.
What do you believe young educators need most right now?
I think what young educators need most, well, that's a great question. I would say a um, belief and support, and making sure that they have the tools and resources they need to be successful. And so it's just making sure that they have the different avenues, whether that's professional development. I think as a new teacher, often you see classroom management could be a challenge, and just making sure we come in with this support lens and really how can we best support what that current teacher is needing. But then also build their own capacity and self-efficacy with providing professional development in the instructional aspects or any other area that they might just need extra assistance in. But I think with young teachers, it's important that you really take the time to support them. And one thing I started doing with our new staff, not just new teachers, but any new staff to our campus, is meeting with them in a one-on-one. twice a year. And it could be, and I just have, two or three questions. What's going well? What do you need help with? And often you can find some underlying themes that can really help, but also it provides them an opportunity to come speak to you. Because as a new teacher, they're often ones that probably aren't going to necessarily come up and talk to the principal or ask for help, but they're really saying, how can I help you? Is something that I've learned from those conversations.
How do you support teachers who are struggling or feeling overwhelmed?
I think the first is listening. And so when I do come across or I do feel a teacher is being overwhelmed, I come in with a listening lens. But also it's knowing the pulse of your own staff in your building. I think you'll know certain times of the year how to, there are going to just be some challenging moments, but how do you be proactive in those moments? And then asking the teachers often, what do you need from me? Or what can I do to help you be successful? And really having this lens of we're in this together and kind of being a partner with through some of the, challenging waters. So those are kind of the things I would say for a teacher that's kind of going through a challenging or overwhelming time. And then using your staff of expertise. There's somebody in your building who's an expert who's a better teacher who's been through that could provide a mentor. And so if your district doesn't already have a program, I would definitely recommend pairing up, new teachers or teachers who just need a mentor, another a colleague in your building.
What role does community partnership play in student success?
I think community partnership plays a vital role in student success because community partners can provide so many resources and opportunities for students that schools sometimes can't do it, simply by themselves. And I think it really helps bridge the gap with families. We've had multiple events where we've given away, example, beds. We've gone to back to school giveaways. We have a food bank that's being funded by many different partners. We have a clothing bank that's run by a local church. So six church ladies come run the clothing bank. It's open every Wednesday from 9 to 11. And I think when you have all those different resources in your school, it really helps open your school doors. And sometimes parents who maybe not have had the best, I guess, impression of a school come into school and they just feel welcome and they feel heard. And so community partners are critical to any school success, whether it's the colleges, whether it's the local churches, whether it's local businesses. They all play a vital role.
Oh, we got another comment here in the chat. Um, Actually, there's two. There's one from Coach Carrie Willis. She says that's great that teachers are getting support, being productive. I put it on the screen. I'm sorry. That teachers are getting support, being productive, or being proactive. I'm sorry, is important. Do you have a comment to that?
That's something I completely agree with, and that's something I've learned early on in my principalship is how to be proactive in knowing the teachers that you currently are working with. I think sometimes I think listening, that's where it comes into a key factor is listening to the teachers, really hearing their feedback, and then going and really making the best decisions based upon that. But yeah, being proactive as much as you can, not with staff and students as well.
And James just put it in the chat here that he agree 100% with you. That's alluding to the comment he made earlier about the teachers and the salaries and being treated unfairly. Um, I want to transition over to your vision, your purpose, and future here in education. What does transformative leadership look like in 2026 and beyond?
I think leadership moving forward is going to be transformative. I think with how technology is advancing, the state of education, it's extremely important to be transformational. And I think when I think of transformational, I also think it means to have a um, learning lens and being flexible. So when I say a learning lens, education is changing, but the key as a leader is to always continue to learn, whether it's listening to podcasts that you have, Charles, yourself, reading books, talking to different people in the field. I think that's something that I've really come to grow into, and then also asking for help. Even as a principal, I think at times it can be challenging. But I think when you're going through a challenge, or if you need, hey, can you just come show me how to do a walkthrough, or can you come help me with this situation? Really asking for help to help yourself grow. And so when I think of transformational leadership, I think moving in 2026, we all as leaders have to be transformational, and really be the leaders that our schools need. And I think that's the part that really keeps me motivated. We're the leaders that the schools need.
So, how do you measure success beyond test scores?
I think we measure success in a school. I think when you walk in a school and you talk to the students, I think that's a key contributor. I think when you talk to the staff, I think if you create a really this sense of, the theme, like it's a common thing to say is this sense of belonging, but how do you go further and really what is a sense of belonging in your school? How do you feel when you walk into the building? How do you feel when you interact with students? And so those are the things that I look at, beyond the test scores, because there are so many other more there's important things in the school besides test scores, but it's really centers around our students and then the staff that's doing the work in the trenches. How do they feel when they come in the building? Do they feel supported? Do they feel that they can be innovative and take risk? Um, so those are the things I think about when you think about school success and culture. It goes back to the culture piece for how that would work.
But there's one the other part to that question
Mhm.
that I just want to throw out there and see maybe how you feel about it is what do you think we can do to rid ourselves of actually teaching students to pass a test instead of doing real and do real education? Do you think that's ever going to change?
I I think so. I think it can change. I think some of the aspects when I think of like the test taking, I see the critical factors of what can we do to prepare our students for life, because there are going to be tests in life. There are going to be different licensure tests, but to me the important thing that I have seen that's been beneficial is watching our students set goals for themselves. So when you look at a score or you look at an individual mark on the test, looking at the goal and say, well, where do you want to be? Do you think you did your best? Do you think there's something you could do? So really looking at the steps along the way, because that translates to everything. I have a lot of students maybe want to play in the NBA. Okay, well, what steps do you need to do to be able to do that? What are some goals you can have for yourself? So when I think of test taking, I think of how do you teach our students to set goals, and then what are the steps needed for the students to actually reach those goals? Because one of my favorite phrases that I love to say is, you shoot for the stars, because if you don't get there, you'll at least be a lot closer than you would have been if you didn't try. Because I look at myself today and think, uh, 10 years ago, would I see myself in the position? Absolutely not. I never thought I'd be sitting in this seat as a principal of two schools. So those are the things I think we can teach our students through those test taking. But how do you make it applicable for life?
The coach Carrie Willis just put this in the chat. She says school districts definitely should have transformational leadership. Um, what is your long-term vision for the Ross Eisenhower campus?
The long-term vision is really, it starts with the foundation we're building now, is just the continued improvement of our schools every single day, every moment of the day. But ultimately, we want to be a school that, when you walk into it, you feel that sense of community. I want to have students who really enjoy coming to school, that have a passion, have a staff there who feels supported, who feels heard, who feels that they can make an impact. Because I think that's one of the key factors I think to keep teachers motivated is having that impact on our students. So long range, that's kind of the plan, but it starts with what you do every single day. So some of those goals that we're working towards is how you start today and how we're going to move forward tomorrow. So that's kind of the long range plan for our schools.
What innovations do you hope to bring to your school community?
I think the first innovation we already are with our campus model, but really when I think of innovation, I think of not being afraid to try different things, and not only with our teachers, but in your school. And if it doesn't work, evaluating it, figuring out, well, what worked, what can we move on from that, what tweaks can we make. So I think when I think of innovation, it's not being afraid to sometimes think outside of the box. I think a lot of times we can get stuck into how it always has been, or this isn't going to work, but really providing that innovative lens. And that's what's the most exciting part of being on this campus is we can be creative. We can think, we can ask our teachers, what do you think about this? Or have we tried this? Could we do a professional development together? And those are just things I think that keep education in a good place, but also allows our teachers to use their expertise when it comes to being innovative.
So tell us this, because I mean, your plate is so full, it runneth over. What keeps you grounded during challenging seasons?
Oh, that is a great question, and that's been something that's been very reflective. Is for myself. Is one sometimes you got to take a pause and reset, and making sure that you are making time for those people who are often sometimes in this work the people closest to you sometimes get the worst of you, and so I always make sure I think about that as I leave the building. Um, I think that's really kind of something grounded. And there's some advice that this too shall pass. I know sometimes when you're in the moments of challenging times, it can seem like it's really the ultimate, like it's a very, big deal. And there are some things that can happen in school that are very significant. But I think the key is remembering as the principal and the leader, it's your job to see the vision the whole year. And during those wavy waters, it's important that you remain steady and consistent and guide your staff through those challenging moments, but also making sure you're taking time for yourself, because what you do for yourself often is modeled for the staff as well. So I think those are kind of the key aspects. And one thing, our superintendent, she's talked to us, our principals at our principal meeting about is joy. So we're reading the book called Joy, and how do you start the first 30 minutes of your day, and how do you end the 30 minutes of your day? And so that's something I'm really being intentional about.
So let's transition over to personal reflections. What brings you joy outside of your work?
What brings me joy outside of my work is that I love to learn, and so that's one thing you'll find me doing is either reading or listening to podcasts, and that really has helped me grow, but also has provided time where I can reflect and think about just what's happening in my current role and how I continue to grow in that. And then also, I like to spend time outside. I like to run. I like to do yoga. Just some different things like that where you can actually, put the phone down, put some time away, and make sure you're taking time for yourself. And then ultimately, the thing we have most important to all of us is our family, and making sure that we understand just the importance of our family and how they're there for you to support you during those challenging times. But just making sure you're still giving the best of yourself to your family.
Balance as a teacher, as a leader, I mean.
Can you repeat that first part of the question?
How do you maintain balance as a leader?
So balance to me is ebbs and flows. I think as a leader, you have to know yourself, and you have to know um, when you do start to feel maybe that sense of overwhelming or challenges, to really look back and think about what are some things to get you back into a good space. And if you look behind me, so this is actually my office. One thing in my office that you'll see is I have notes and pictures everywhere. And to me, that's where I kind of can get to my balance is when if I feel uneasy or if I'm having a rough day, I can read a note from a former student, a former parent, and it really gets you in the right place. And so I think making sure that you have reminders of that in your work, whether it's literally hanging up on your wall, pictures, that kind of helps me create that sense of balance in my life.
So, what is one misconception people have about principles?
One misconception I think people have about principles is that's a tough question. I think sometimes as I think people could think we might have all the answers, and that I think as a building principal, the best thing that I've learned is are you vulnerable and how do you ask for help? And I think that's one thing that I've really worked on modeling for our staff, and that allows them to feel that sense of ease. So I think that's probably one thing that I think could go a long way is that principals do have a lot on their plates, but they also are humans, and and need help sometimes. And I think that's what probably one of the things I would say.
Um, Coach Carey Willis just put this in the chat. Some of the innovative programs should focus on teacher health, including financial wellness. It's a key aspect that's often overlooked. I'm glad you're looking for ways to revolutionize.
No, that's a great point, and I think that's something that I'll take back to our team is that financial literacy piece. Not only for we talk about a lot with our students, especially in middle school, but financial literacy for teachers as well, because that's something that we all could work on.
What is a moment in your career that affirmed your purpose?
So when I think of a moment, I'm probably going to go back to this is going to be over time. So when I first became an assistant principal, this is my very first day at Eisenhower Middle School, um, and I walk into a classroom, and a student had their phone, and so obviously you can't have your phone on the class. And I went to get her phone, and she basically told me, "You're not getting my phone," but maybe use some different wording, and I was like, okay, I came in thinking I'm the assistant principal. She's gonna give me no, that didn't work, and it really, you hindsight now this student is going to be a senior, is someone I've stayed in touch with throughout her time, and she often said to me during that time, like, you don't know my life. You drive your fancy car and then leave and come back, and so it really showed me the power of relationships, and sometimes with our students with. Uh, this word respect. I think often respect is earned, and I think um, that's one of the moments that I take with me is that today what we see from our students might not be the outcome they have, and sometimes it just takes time and building that trust and relationship. So I would say it's one moment, it's moments over time that have really helped shape me.
Coach Kerry Willis also says here, I put it on the screen. I was a teacher for over 20 years. I'm excited. You humanized the role of principal.
Yeah, to me that's critical, not only with principals but our teachers as well. Often many people bring different when you have a large staff, there's always going to be something. And one thing when I think of being a human is that's what we are first, is we're human beings. And so one thing that I always try to do, there's always when staff members are going through a hard time, I'll try to send them a little card. During on their birthdays, I write them a birthday note, and just those little things that I think sometimes can be overlooked, but really play a part of that human role. It helps to bridge that connection between your staff and yourself.
Is a lesson you learned the hard way.
Oh, I would say this lesson I continue to learn is one thing that I learned. So when I started as teaching a physical education teacher, I remember one of my I guess evaluation or critiques was you don't have enough excitement, you don't have enough energy, and what I learned during that is you have to be authentic to yourself because I can't be that person because that's just not my personality. And I'm a principal. I lead with my heart, and sometimes your heart can get you in trouble um, because you might give people a second chance, you might just do different things that really or sometimes could be not looked at in a different way. But the one thing I've learned is always be yourself, but learn from your mistakes and just make sure that you continue to do what you feel is in the best interest of students in your school, and then you'll be okay in the end.
Let's go over to your legacy and impact. What do you hope your students remember about your years from now?
I hope, simply put, I hope the students say, we had a principal who cared and showed up for us. And I think that if I have that impact, that'll mean a lot. Um, I think when I'm all said and done, I think I continue to give everything I have every single day. So I have no regrets in those aspects. Um, and so those are kind of some things I think that, but the students say that I cared and I showed up for them. I think I would be pretty happy with that.
How do you want your staff to describe your leadership?
I would say very similar. I would say I hope the staffs at both schools feel that they have a leader who truly cares and invested in our community and our schools, but also a leader who is visible. I think that's the key factor. Is I always want to be a principal that's approachable, someone they can talk to. I mean, the open door policy, but really meeting the teachers where they're at, going to their rooms. So I would say those are the things that I would hope our staff would say about myself.
So, what legacy do you hope to leave in Topeka Public Schools?
I think it goes back to just some old adages that my parents taught me is you leave it better than you found it. It sounds simple, but I hope that which I know we're working towards that when I do leave Ross and Eisenhower, it's in a much better place than I found it, just to put it simply. And that they had a leader who gave everything they had to the community to make it the best it possibly can be.
What advice would you give to young Black men entering education?
The first thing I would say is thank you. You're not alone. Please reach out to anybody that you know that's gone through it. I would say the best piece of advice I could tell you is to get a mentor, and someone that can help guide you, someone you can have conversations with, because there's some things, and I'm sure Charles, you can relate to this, that experience just teaches you that you can't learn without experience. But mentors can at least help make the road not so bumpy. You're still going to hit your head and fall down, but they'll it at least makes it a little easier to navigate. So I would say, get a mentor, get a community group, and then reach out if you need anything.
And what does leadership mean to you at this stage of your journey?
Leadership to me at this stage in my journey is being a leader is not necessary. It's not about a title. It's not about a position. I see leaders every day in schools in America. I see students who are leaders. I see teachers who are leaders. And so when I think of leadership, I think it's really just a shared responsibility. There are just certain positions that I think we're fortunate to be in these positions, but to remember that when you are a leader, that does come with a responsibility to act and know better, to do the best you can in the service of our students.
So, when we spoke earlier, we spoke about We Do Black History 365. And I asked you who was the most influential person in your life and career. And you told me it was your father. Can you tell us? You've shared that your father is the most influential person in your life. What make his leadership so powerful?
I, I think I said my father's the most inspirational person to me is because that's the person that you look up to, you look to for guidance. And my dad's a very soft-spoken individual, doesn't have to say a whole lot, and so it really reminds me of with our students is that your action. So one thing my dad, Gardner, is big on is actions and compassionate and being there for you. And oftentimes you don't have to say anything. And so I would say with my father is that I learned a lot just from by watching, and I think that's one thing I take in consideration as I move throughout the schools is our students are always watching you, how you handle a situation, how you handle a challenging moment, how you react to a certain circumstance. Because that's what I did as a young boy, and that's what helped me get to where I'm at. And so my dad left a legacy for myself. My dad was often a principal, an African American principal at a time when there weren't a lot of principals. He went to different districts. He went to a district where he was one of the first, African American principals. So, he paved a legacy for me and gave me an opportunity to really provide me an advantage that I take to heart every single day. Is that he helped me get where I'm at. And then my goal is I just want to not only make him proud. He already says he's proud of me, but to provide a legacy for those who can come after me to make it in these positions.
So, what lessons from your father do you carry into your work as a principal?
I mentioned some of them. Um, I would say just being, your authentic self, um, the ability to just be a lifelong learner. I think it's a lesson my dad taught me, and just be the best you can in whatever position you're at. And so I would say my advice for anybody out there, whether you're in the classroom, whether you're a paraprofessional, whether you're a custodian, is be the best and have that expectation for yourself, have the expectation for your school, is that our goal is to be the best we can. And then you'd be surprised about the great things that will come your way.
I have another question for you here that's in the chat. Coach Carey says, being a principal of two schools must be challenging. It's great that you found ways to have balance. Does your school have yoga or meditation classes for staff?
We do not. We have partnered, not this year, but 2 years ago, we did partner with a yoga studio, and they came twice during the school year and provided yoga to our staff. But no, that's another reminder that I should reach out to them. I think providing those avenues for staff um, is a great way to not only build community, but build those self practices or self care routines within the school by offering a yoga class after school, a meditation class after school. And I do know some of our teachers do those yoga and meditation with our students. I know during some break because I have seen that in the classrooms.
How did he model strength, discipline, and compassion in ways that shaped your identity? Talk about your father.
I would, with strength, I would say just being courageous, and strength doesn't necessarily always have to look strong, like figuratively, but strength can just be coming to work every day, um, being the consistent leader that your school needs. And so I would say that's one thing I think my dad taught me. The Probably the biggest lesson is strength can look in different ways, and strength's often needed at times when other people are not strong. And so I think that's something that I can take away from my father.
What is one piece of wisdom from him that you find yourself repeating to students or staff?
Oh, that's um, be where your feet are, be present, be the best you can in whatever you're doing, and I think that's will get you a long way in life.
You honor his legacy through your leadership.
Well, I hope I'm honoring his legacy through my leadership. And often people ask me kind of at what's your 5-year plan, 10-year plan. I really don't. I really thought about this, and I don't have a 5 or 10-year plan because 10 years ago I didn't think I'd be here. It goes back to what I've stated many times: is just being the best you can be in whatever you're doing. And so that's kind of the legacy I hope that my dad would say about myself.
So let me ask you a few questions here about Black history and legacy. Can you tell us, how does Black History Month influence your work as a leader?
When I think of Black History Month, I think of all the people who came before me. And that's not something that I take lightly. And sometimes I can feel my ancestors when I'm going through those challenging times or when I'm going through those tough moments. I can feel those who came before me, that without their sacrifice, I could never be a principal of two schools. Let alone one school. And so that's something that I take with me every single day. And I think that's helped really provide really a framework for not only Black History Month, but as we operate every month at the school as a Black leader. Just that weight and responsibility, I think, is something that I don't take lightly because of all the people who have sacrificed for me. And then as a leader, when you think about Black History Month, I look at the different things that we can, as a school, do. So whether it's putting things in the hallway, having assemblies. One thing we had is different guest speakers. We brought in as many African American and minority speakers just to come talk about careers and talk about how they talk their story. Because it just takes one story to relate to a student. And so when I think of Black history, I just think of the legacy and the work that still needs to be done in our schools.
So can you tell us, why is it important for students to see Black leadership in their schools?
to show that it's possible. Often what I find with the students I talk to is if they don't see it sometimes, they don't believe it. And so I think when I think about my career, how many black teachers did I have, or how many minority? I can name them on my hand. I had a principal, but that was my own father. So I had my, black principal, that was my own father. So that's something that I think that I would take away from that.
Um, Coach Carrie put this in the chat, and she wants you to know that she offers free financial wellness workshops for school employees. She wants you to connect with her at GR8 Finances if you're interested in for your school. And she also says that that's such a flex, being a principal of two schools, such a big deal. Congratulations.
No, no, thank you for that. And that's been the most encouraging part. So when I first took on two schools, uh, I think it created a little probably worrisome in some people's eyes, just with the responsibility. But there are so many people, and that's why when I go to work every day, there's so many people that say, Dr. Gardner, I'm praying for you. You need anything? I was at the post office yesterday, mailing something, and an older, black gentleman comes up to me and says, "I'm so proud of you. Keep doing what you're doing." And when I hear that, that just really helps me realize that I am in the right work, and there's so many people supporting me that I don't even know, and so that's what motivates me. So thank you for acknowledging that, saying that.
How do you incorporate culturally responsive practices into your campus?
I think it's recognition of all different cultures, and that's the best part. I think that's the best part of our schools is diversity. We're basically a third. So a third Hispanic, a third African American, and a third Caucasian across both campuses. But recognizing the values and heritages of all different races, all nationalities, to provide well-rounded students. So I think that's the best part of our campus is when you leave our campus, you're going to have exposure to the Hispanic culture, you have exposure to the African American and Black culture, and just making sure that you spend the time to recognize the different cultures because they all bring something vastly unique to the table.
I had to get this question in because when I said Thurgood Marshall would be
Mhm.
very proud of you, I want you to please tell this audience, what does the legacy of Brown v. Board education mean to you as a Topeka native?
So those that don't know, Brown versus Board is actually in Topeka, Kansas. And so when you think of that landmark case, there's so many things to say about that. But the legacy that continues, and I would say the best part of being in Topeka is being able to take students there so they can actually learn um, about that and how it's in Topeka. So I would just say the legacy, and then what are we doing since Brown v. Board is kind of the question that I've been reflecting on.
Last question for you. How do you ensure that Black students feel affirmed and empowered?
I would say it goes back to really what you do with any student, but really meeting the student where they're at, really no matter the race. I think that's how you can make a student feel empowered, and also letting them know that their voice does matter and that um, you do have that listening ear, and then building those relationships with the students. I think are ways to continue to empower our students, and giving them ownership and providing different leadership opportunities for the students to shine and finding the things that they are passionate about so they can experience success or mastery in a certain area.
And so, in closing, what are some words of wisdom and encouragement you'd like to leave for our audience? How they can connect with you via social media, your websites, or any of those good things that you'd like for them to know?
First, Charles, thank you for having me have this conversation. It came at a perfect time. It was great just to just talk leadership, community, and school. Because as yourself, I wouldn't say without this platform, a lot of the work that us in education wouldn't get that light shined on them. So thank you for that. I would say anybody that's interested in connecting, I am on LinkedIn, but also feel free to look up our schools, Ross Elementary and Eisenhower Middle School. Send us an email, call us, and then anybody out there who is just needing someone to talk to, have different conversations with necessarily in education, feel free to always reach out. In the words of wisdom, I've said this many times, just be the best you can where you're at, and the great things will continue to happen.
Well, before closing, I just want to tell you I appreciate you so much for being here. And for those, of course, they wouldn't know this unless I said, but we booked this booking like maybe some like 6 months ago, or was it longer?
Right, six months ago, I think you're right.
Yeah. And I tell you, it was well worth the wait. And I want to let you know that I appreciate you for being here, but also, as you've been told before, I am so proud of the accomplishments that you are making, especially in this education realm as of today's time, because that's something that I know has got to be very, very difficult. And we definitely appreciate you. Um, Tonight's conversation reminds us that leadership is not a title, it's a responsibility. Dr. Nicholas Gardner stands as a testament to what happens when purpose meets preparation, when community meets commitment, and when a leader chooses to serve with integrity and heart. In the spirit of James Baldwin, he faces the truth of our educational landscape and chooses to build something better. In the spirit of his father, he leads with strength, humility, and unwavering love for his community. And in the spirit of Black history, he continues to work. He continues the work of shaping a future where every child has the opportunity to thrive. Thank you, Dr. Gardner, for your service, your vision, and your dedication to the next generation. And thank you to our viewers for joining us on America in Black and White. So until the next time, stay informed, stay inspired, and stay committed to the work. Thank you again, Dr. Gardner. You all have a great evening. We will be back tomorrow for another great show. And hopefully, you guys will be joining us because it's definitely worth coming.